Hey, Pat.
Hey.
Do you prefer Armageddon or the core?
Definitely Armageddon. No, the core. No, Armageddon. Deep Impact.
Welcome to Passion of the Geeks, the show in which two friends and fellow geeks talk about geek and pop culture and everything else we enjoy. I'm Greg.
And I am Pat.
And let's get on with the show. Hi, Pat. How are you doing?
Hi, Greg. I'm doing fine. And you?
I'm fine as well. It has been a while since we recorded our last episode.
Yeah.
Which makes me all the more excited about this one.
As usual, Greg.
Speaking of recent episodes, some of you might have noticed that a new episode popped up last week or a few days earlier, actually, with a little bit of a different format. We called it Passion of the Geeks Unplugged, and it's one of those new things we're trying out. So the idea is to, from time to time, maybe in those weeks where we don't have a new full episode, to produce shorter episodes that just deal with one little topic that's dear to our hearts and probably where just one of us is a true expert in. So 15 minutes, just one of us, shorter, straight to the point, but still with passion. So Pat, do you have any ideas what you're going to try and share with our listeners in your Unplugged podcasts?
Well, I do have a couple of ideas. I'm not yet sure which one I will try out first, but it will probably involve some retro gaming at one point, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and obviously if you have feedback on the new format, Passion of the Geeks Unplugged, obviously we would welcome that. But other than that, don't worry, the full episodes are here to stay. We're just trying out new things.
Yes.
Okay. Let's get on with the real show. So, Pat, do you have any news for us?
Yeah, well, I quickly wanted to mention that Google canceled the free photo upload for its Google Photo service. If you upload photos, they're now part of your 15 gigabyte you get for free with each Google account. And I confess it's a little bit of a bummer. I mean, 15 gigabytes is much more than you get anywhere else, and plus its photo services are really great, but it's still, well, in my opinion, it feels a little bit shallow because it's again one of these times where one big company launches a service and it's free and everyone else is kind of forced out of competition, and once everyone else is gone, they still start charging money. It's just something big companies do, I guess. Yeah, it's a little bit sad. It's still a great service, but yeah.
I think I read about that somewhere in a book. I think they call it capitalism.
Exactly.
I mean, as you put it, 15 gigabytes is still a lot. I have to admit, I don't use Google Photos. I'm a Mac person. I have everything in iPhoto, and that works out for me. I'm paying for an iCloud as well, just to have enough space for all my backups and everything. But as you put it nicely, it's not that they changed the service that is the issue. It's that they kind of killed the competition, and now that they're doing it. You
still can add more space if you need to and pay for it, and they have great value for the space. So that's not the issue. It's just the little companies that have to go.
I mean, one thing I'm wondering, is it just that the service is so popular that they need kind of, they need to have so many users that they need more space?
Well, that's sort of part of the official explanation, yes. And I do understand that, because space in such a way in a cloud is not as cheap as it is at home. You cannot compare that because there's a lot of services going on, a lot of backups and timed services and shadows copies. So it's certainly more expensive than just having 50 gigabyte at home. So I kind of can understand that. It's just the timing seems strange to me.
Yeah.
But what about you, Greg? Do you have a little more happier news?
Well, happier, I don't know, but I also have some tech news. Apple had a big week. They, basically they announced and released, they released 2 new products last week. They finally released their new operating system, Big Sur, last Thursday. So far, I upgraded all my Mac devices. Seems to run smoothly. But the bigger news, the bigger update, and one of the reasons why they had to release their new operating system as well, is they released 3 new Macs, a new MacBook Air, a new MacBook Pro, and a new Mac Mini with their own processor with Apple Silicon, the M1 chip. And yeah, the first reviews are coming in, and so far it looks like, it sounds very promising. So apparently these laptops or the Mac Mini with this new chip, they're very fast, and the laptops, the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro, apparently they're fast and they don't need any battery for it. So it seems like Apple tried to maximize power while also extending battery life, and it seems they were very successful there. Which makes me very optimistic for the future. Kind of at the moment, I'm not in the market for a new Mac. I have a very recent MacBook Pro. My iMac, still has maybe a year or 2 to go. But the fact that they have an M1 chip that's apparently really, really good makes me all the more excited for an M2 or an M1X or whatever is next. I mean, you're not the biggest Mac guy, but what do you think about the kind of Apple's move away from Intel processors to their own silicon?
First, let me put it this way. It's true. I didn't have any Mac devices at home. The first thing is it's sad for Intel. They are not at their highest point right now. Everything goes against them. And I think competition is, as we often said, competition is good. Having something new and something that we can show the world. We see new technology going forward. This is a good thing. And the numbers are amazing for the new chip. And I'm looking forward to see this sort of technology implemented in other devices as well. So I think it's great. Even though I'm not an Apple user, I do think they're doing a great job right now. They had a little bit of a rough patch in the last couple of years, I would say. And it's really great that they're up to their old standards.
I mean, if by a rough patch you mean increasing market capitalization every quarter.
No, I meant just in technology, not in sales, obviously. I meant they weren't very innovative in the last couple of years. They just did their thing and kind of didn't improve a lot on it. So I think that is really great to see.
Yeah, they've been iterating and not innovating.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. This is what I mean.
Yeah, kind of one thing I've in all those benchmark videos, when kind of they're trying out different programs. One thing you're not allowed to forget, I mean, because the M1 chip has a completely new architecture, all that software that was written for an Intel processor needs to be emulated. And apparently the emulation layer they built, Rosetta 2, is really good.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
That helps a lot, yeah. So yeah, I'm really excited for Apple Silicon. And yeah, I'm kind of, I shouldn't say this, kind of part of me hopes that one of my Macs breaks down so I can buy a new one. But honestly, I wouldn't want an iMac kind of with the first generation or something. Maybe 2022, I'm in a market for a new Mac, so I hope they release a big new product with an Apple Silicon chip then. Okay, moving on. Pat, do you have anything interesting for our listeners to check out?
Oh, yeah. I have something very interesting, actually. It's a series of books. It's called The Deathgate Cycle by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. It's not one of their more well-known works. Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman are mostly known for their Dragonlance books. But they wrote a very, very awesome fantasy series called The Deathgate Cycle, which is not the typical Tolkien-esque fantasy. There's still some elves and dwarves and obviously humans in it, but it's all a little bit different. For example, the whole series actually takes place in the far future after a nuclear holocaust. The main protagonist is a young man called Haplo, and he is a patron. And that's a sort of a magical race that came from that nuclear holocaust. And the patron race had kind of the mirror opposite, the Sartan race, and they were struggling for control of that new world that existed with the new races of elves and dwarves and so on. Until the Sartan felt that the patrons have become too dangerous, and they split the world apart into 4 realms, each, of course, as it should be, assigned to a element, so earth, air, and so on. And the story begins with Haplo escaping a prison called the Labyrinth, where the Sartan have put the patron race, because the patron race were kind of referred as the evil ones, and the Sartan are the white, the pure race, some sort of angelic without the wings. And the patrons, even though they look like humans, they're more like the demonic, they're more destructive magic and so on. And Haplo escapes from that labyrinth and starts to gather information about the underworld. And from that point on, the story unfolds. It's a bit too complicated to just put into a few words, but it's a fantastic story. It's clearly very well written. It has such great characters in it. I mean, the ending might be a little bit cheap, but all in all, it's a fantastic story. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, but I've never heard of the Deathgate Cycle.
Yeah.
I have to admit I'm not that well versed in kind of that literary area. But yeah, it's what you're describing sounds very interesting. I mean, Deathgate Cycle sounds like a lot of books. How many? If I want to read this, what's the commitment I'm getting into?
Well, the thing is, it's an ongoing story. You have to read all of them, and it's 7 books. They're not as thick, not as heavy as a lot of other modern books. It's not like reading A Song of Ice and Fire. They're a little bit shorter than that. It's really a manageable size of books. But you need to read all of them to have the entire story.
Yeah, that just seems like so much time.
Well, I really, really think this should be turned into a TV series. It would be awesome. Maybe one day.
Maybe one day, yeah.
Maybe one day. But let's get back to you.
Yeah, speaking of not having time to read a couple of books, but apparently I had enough time to sink a few hours into Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the new Assassin's Creed game by Ubisoft. So I'm still waiting for my PS4. I'm still waiting for Cyberpunk 2077 and Miles Morales Spider-Man. So yeah, why not do the swan song of kind of my PS4 with Assassin's Creed Valhalla? I kind of enjoyed most of the Assassin's Creed games. I think we already talked a little bit about that. I still love Black Flag. I like the last two, Origins and Odyssey. And honestly, Valhalla is kind of similar. It's a mix between Odyssey and Origins. It's a decent game. It's a little bit too big, though. Kind of like, I think in Odyssey, I had the same problem. I mean, the story was actually quite good in Odyssey, but the progression was too slow. And I'm kind of having the same feeling in Valhalla. Whatever I'm doing, it's actually fun. It's fun to play Viking. It's fun to raid abbeys and churches and villages. And it's a lot of fun. But there is just so much of it to do. In order to progress, there's so many things you do that, it's fun to raid one abbey. It's fun to have an assault on a kind of a fortress and storm it and clear gates and stuff like that. But if I have to do that 5 times in a row, it kind of gets old. So I'm obviously I keep playing because I'm kind of engaged. Biggest problem though is the game is very buggy. I started the game and kind of after almost 2 hours, I basically had a game-breaking bug where I couldn't advance anymore, and I had to restart again the whole game to progress. And from time to time, I had to restart quests to be able to finish them and so on. So they definitely need to put out a better patch. Also, the fighting, it's not that refined as I was hoping to. Sometimes it just feels like your character is not doing what you're pressing, which is very frustrating. So, it just seems to me they wanted to get the game out in November of this year, and they kind of rushed it in the end. So they're kind of doing the opposite thing that Cyberpunk is doing. So I just hope that, Cyberpunk is more refined. And obviously, if you like Assassin's Creed, you're probably going to like Valhalla as well. They're doing some really cool stuff. They got rid of the whole side quest things. It's just world events now that you walk up to a thing and then it starts a little moment or a little quest. I actually quite like that. That being said, the fighting in, let's say, Ghost of Tsushima is just so much better than Valhalla. And if you just want to kill some time before Cyberpunk comes out, play Ghost of Tsushima. They just released, or actually a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago, they released Ghost of Tsushima Legends for free. It's the multiplayer update, so you can play with, or actually with some player characters. Either kind of just basically defend your base, or you can complete some missions. And I would honestly argue fighting in Ghost of Tsushima is a lot more fun than it is in Valhalla. Story so far of Valhalla is good. But if you're just killing time, I would recommend Ghost of Tsushima instead of Valhalla. You intending to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla?
Oh, well, definitely. Actually, I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't bought it yet because right now I don't have time for a whole new Assassin's Creed game. Because as you said, it's just the normal thing. They require a lot of time. The thing is, it's normal by now that an Ubisoft game has its problems when it's released. So that's the other thing. I'm waiting for a couple of patches and until it runs a little bit smoother. But what you tell sounds truly great. So I'm really looking forward to that. Sounds like my kind of game.
Yeah, if you like Assassin's Creed, if you like Vikings, you're definitely gonna find things to love in Valhalla. If you just want to kill some time until Cyberpunk, Ghost of Tsushima is the way to go.
All right, then. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, let's move on to our main topic. This week, we decided to do something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And usually we kind of try to celebrate positivity on this podcast. unless it's about the Snyder Cut. But this week we're going to talk about two movies that, I don't really know what the final verdict is going to be about those, but it's definitely two movies I've watched way too many times. We're going to talk about 1998's Armageddon by Michael Bay and 2003's The Core by John Amiel. As far as I think, two movies with exactly the same premise.
Yeah.
It's just, in one movie they have some space shuttles and they fly to an asteroid to blow him up. And in the other movie, they build a ship that travels to the center of the Earth to blow the Earth's core up to kind of restart it. And let's just get this out of the way. Both of them are just equally silly.
Oh, yes.
Both of them are just equally silly. So this is not going to be a contest about which one of these movies is sillier and does make less sense scientifically. This is just basically supposed to be a little, let's call it a celebration of that stupidity and why The Core and Armageddon are, and I think, spoiler alert, two movies that are not good, but that we kind of enjoy for various reasons. So, Pat, do you want to get us started with just some general thoughts about either Armageddon or The Core? Which one do you prefer to start with?
Yeah, well, first, I still want to say, as you said, this channel is about positivity. And there are positive things in these movies. Things we like, things we enjoy, and occasionally kind of celebrate about them. As you said, Greg, I mean, scientifically, both movies are really, really bad. At times, The Core even more so. If you look at these movies scientifically, you won't enjoy them. That's for sure. But both of these movies have some great sides in them. For a long time, I thought that I like The Core more than Armageddon. Now that I've rewatched both of them, I would say, all in all, I enjoyed Armageddon a little bit more. Or what would you say?
It's really hard to say. Kind of, if I focus on which is the trashiest movie, the silliest movie that I know, that it's so bad that it's good, it's The Core. Mm-hmm. But if it's just, one stupid spectacle, I'd probably go for Armageddon. Because The Core is definitely not as big and not as, doesn't have as many bells and whistles as Armageddon does.
Yeah. Mm.
But then again, it has so many silly things in there. I think there is a point for both of these movies where I have to ask myself, did they know that this is silly? Did they, were they serious? And honestly, I don't know.
Well, the truth is, I think they did. I have always the feeling that if you watch a scene, say in The Core, where they talk, and I mean, there are some genuine jokes in there, and some of them are probably in the situation that these people are not appropriate to joke about these things, but there are jokes in there. Sometimes it feels to me like one of these old disaster movie spoofs, like Airplane or Airplane 2, the sequel. and I think I sometimes feel these actors, they were bursting out in laughter once the director yelled cut. I think they knew.
I don't know. Because it just seems to me, I mean, if that was the intention, I don't see it in the scenes that are on screen.
Yeah, that's true.
And it just, I mean, when you look at the core more so than Armageddon. I mean, I don't believe that anyone thought, okay, this is a good idea. This is so great. This is gonna be the biggest movie of the year. I just don't believe that anyone had that idea, because there are so many things in there that are just so stupid.
Oh, yes. But as I said, I think I feel that the actors had fun doing their part.
I hope so.
Either that or they're really professional.
I mean, I just hope they got paid well. Okay, so let's dive into a little bit deeper. I mean,
gladly.
Both movies have very, very similar premises. So if we had to kind of judge the premise of the core and of Armageddon, so on a scale from 1 to silly, where do they stand?
Half past silly.
Half past silly.
No, they really have the same structure, basically. They both start with a problem that is presented to the audience and a sort of a vague idea where it comes from. And then it goes like in this getting ready montage, and then they're on their way. Half of the crew dies. They make it. Yay. It's just, as you said, they're just going to opposite directions.
Yeah. It's just down or up.
Yeah.
I actually have to admit, I mean, if for both movies, the first 10 minutes of Armageddon, I think it starts with kind of the meteor that killed all the dinosaurs, and then the meteor shower in kind of New York. I mean, that's a pretty compelling beginning.
Exactly.
Actually, the core, the beginning is very interesting as well, because you don't really know what the mystery is. And kind of, I would argue that the first 10 minutes of both of those movies, roughly 10 minutes, are actually quite okay.
Yeah, definitely.
But in the core, as soon as the space shuttle shows up, and in Armageddon, as soon as the drillers show up, it just gets silly and downhill from there, kind of premise or science-wise. It's very interesting that kind of both of those movies get silly the moment their main characters get introduced.
In the core, it kind of makes sense why they introduce the Aaron Eckhart character, because he knows some stuff. The government asks him a couple of questions, and then they're sort of, okay, we're done here, thank you. And up to that point, it's really great. It has, as you said, there is a mystery there. It's well acted, well directed. I think the core actually is pretty well directed, as long as there is no action going on. The other thing is Armageddon is very, very silly, because why on earth would anyone train drillers to send into space if you could just show astronauts how to drill? It makes no sense. But it will also be boring.
Yeah. What I actually here, props to the screenwriters of the core. The way the Aaron Eckhart character is introduced, and how kind of the beginning of the movie shows that he's very good at what he does, is I actually like that. So Cooper Lane and John Rogers, they definitely know what they're doing. Fun fact, John Rogers, the guy from Leverage.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of that when he says, or kind of when he solves the mystery, why he was put there, and said, the clue is that I and my friend are here. That's why it needs to be magnetism or something like that. I actually quite like that. And he seems like a clever guy.
Exactly.
And kind of generally speaking, the crew, the whole crew in the core, it makes sense that those people are there.
True.
But in Armageddon, as you said, I mean, why? I mean, these and it comes out in the movie. These people are not supposed to step on a space shuttle and fly to space. They're not supposed to do that. But why? Why?
Well, they would also, fun fact, they would never be fit enough to survive this. Well, some of them at least.
Fair enough. Most of them die, so.
Okay, it's true.
Most of them die.
But not at launch.
Okay, so, on premise, they're both silly.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of a meteor coming towards Earth and what it means for mankind is a fantastic idea. It's a recipe for a great disaster movie. I mean, at roughly the same time, Deep Impact explored the same premise of the meteor with a completely different style. And so that is interesting. But on the other hand, in the core, the idea that the kind of the Earth's core stops spinning, and I mean, it is later revealed that mankind is kind of at fault for that because they tried some mega weapon or something. So this is okay. This is something that I actually like if mankind is to blame, but it's just silly.
Yeah, and kind of for those listeners at home, because this is an audio podcast, while Pat was describing the plot of the core, I was shaking my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so. Armageddon, I can see the problem, the core. Yeah, it just does not frighten me that much. I mean, yeah, having a meteor, that's a fear that people might actually have, something that's possible. But yeah, that the Earth stops spinning, I don't think that anyone has that on their top 10 things they're afraid of. Definitely not.
Right after sharks or something.
Yeah. Sharknado or so.
Oh, yeah. Don't go that way.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Let's move on. So both of these movies have actually quite interesting casts. So how do the two casts compare? How does the cast of The Core compare with the cast of Armageddon?
Yeah, well, the first thing is the cast of The Core is a little bit more compact. In Armageddon, there are way too many characters. I felt that you could have just combined a couple of them and you would have lost nothing. They still have their sort of stereotypes that they're doing there and their character tropes that they're filling. Well, they're fun. The characters are fun in Armageddon, aren't they?
Yeah.
Especially the Russian and Mir.
Kind of rewatching it, I'm not sure. I mean, it's a total cliche.
Yeah, definitely. I think it meant as a cliche, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think so.
And here's the thing: I almost found kind of the whole idea of Armageddon very jingoistic, very pro-America, and the only thing that the Russian is good for is hitting stuff, and he's very weird, and Mir is basically falling apart. So it's so hooray, yay, America, that I think the core is pro-America as well. Kind of obvious, kind of because in the end it's the Americans who solved the problem that America created. So not sure what the hidden meaning is there, but just when you look at the cast, I mean, they're all American. Both of them are, I would argue, almost A-listers, or kind of both casts are full with A-listers or nearly A-listers. Maybe Armageddon has a slight edge there with Bruce Willis. He was definitely the most famous one there. Ben Affleck was up and coming. Yeah, I think Billy Bob Thornton is there as well. So, I mean, they have some names. Hilary Swank, did she win the Oscar before The Core or afterwards?
That's a question I cannot answer right now.
I think it was so she was definitely up and coming as well.
Roughly at the same time.
Roughly at the same time, yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron Eckhart, not top A-lister, but definitely well-respected actor. Stanley Tucci, Delroy Lindo. I mean, there are a few names in there that, kind of definitely ring a bell. But I give the edge to Armageddon when it comes to cast. And I think, and what I see in Armageddon a little bit more, I think they knew a little bit more that it was silly than the cast of the core did. Because they're definitely chewing scenery.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, you're probably right. And I agree. The cast in Armageddon is a little bit more top-notch. But the problem is that there are too many. I think I kind of lost track who is still alive and who is dead already.
Yeah.
And that was nicer in the core. And I really liked their acting in the core. But yeah, in the end, I think if we would have points here, the point would go to Armageddon.
Yeah, I mean, in the core, obviously, it was a little bit easier for the core because the cast was smaller. But they definitely have kind of, especially the characters who are part of the crew that goes down with the ship. They all had their moments. I can tell you something about all of their characters.
Exactly.
Whereas in Armageddon, I probably won't be able to name all the characters, kind of not even name all the characters, just remember all the characters. I couldn't tell you how they died, and I could barely tell you something about especially those guys who died. I mean, everyone who, basically all the characters who die except Bruce Willis, I couldn't tell you anything about their character. I mean, one was just big and loved his mama, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean, Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Steve Buscemi, and so obviously they're more memorable. But yeah, there are just way too many people in that movie. But maybe they needed to kill off people to show that sending drillers into space is just a really bad idea.
Yeah, because it is.
Yeah, it just is.
But one thing that I liked was that they were actually sending 2 crews. That was a nice touch. I'm sure in reality NASA would send even more if they had the possibility. But I felt that it was a nice touch that they included 2 crews. The problem was you kind of knew, okay, this is the B crew and they're probably going to die. And you're just waiting for that. It took a little bit of the suspense away, I thought.
I mean, again, we're getting to the discussion about how scientifically accurate any of these movies are. And I think it's fair to say that all of them are just dead instantly in all the cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no reason that anyone survives in any of those scenarios. No, none whatsoever.
No chance. Yeah. Absolutely not.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about execution. So, Michael Bay versus John Amiel. What's our verdict there?
This is really a good question. As I said before, I liked a lot of the directing in the core, especially the smaller scenes are really well directed, I felt. But I know Michael Bay often gets mocked and laughed about, but he really, really knows how to direct a spectacle. And I mean, as soon as the action happens, he shines, in my opinion. Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, there are many Michael Bay movies that are bad, and there's a lot to critique about. There are lots of things to critique about Michael Bay and the way he directs. Is for example, the Transformers movies and whatnot. But one thing you can't say about his movies, that he doesn't show you where the money went.
Yeah.
And as you put it so nicely, I mean, it's the spectacle is definitely on the screen. And I mean, when he's at the top of his game, I would actually argue that he's he's a really interesting director. Well, interesting director, not in the sense of interesting because he creates intimate movies that have a lot to say, but he's an interesting director because it's really hard to make something look like a Michael Bay movie. So he has a distinct style, and I mean, there are lots of bad directors, and you watch a movie of theirs, and you can't see what their style is, and they're just basically they're competent but not exciting. And the Michael Bay movie looks exciting. Sometimes they miserably fail, but I would say they're always interesting. Even if there are failures, they're interesting failures to look at. And yeah, the direction in Armageddon, I mean, it's a silly spectacle. I think it cost about $140 million at that time. And you can see that on the screen. I mean, I watched the movie recently. It still looks pretty good.
It does, yes.
It still looks pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really think that we can blame him. The one thing, though, and I mentioned it before, I mean, both of the movies are very pro-America. Armageddon even more so. I don't really know why that is. Kind of one reason I see is maybe because Armageddon was produced during the Clinton era. There was, hurrah, America, or whatever. And the core is from 2003, kind of after 9/11, when kind of America went to war everywhere. Bush was president, and kind of the whole image of America, kind of started to fade a little bit. Maybe that is a reason why the core is less pro-America than Armageddon. But maybe the intimate scenes are better in the core, but overall, Armageddon is the better looking movie.
Yeah, and I think this is a kind of movie that you watch because of the spectacle. And that's because I think it is more important to have a well-directed spectacle than to have well-directed intimate scenes. The core does some really strange things with the action scenes. It often feels like, well, just pull the guy out of there. You're kind of yelling at the screen, just pull him out of there. You can do it. The door is right behind you, man. And he doesn't do it, and someone dies, and then the other guy pulls the first guy out through the door. And it just feels a little, again, it's a bit shallow. It doesn't really work all the time. And in Armageddon, I mean, it's a movie from 1998, and there's still scenes where you just go like, ooh, oh dear, and and ooh, that's got hurt. It's really awesome to watch.
Yeah, it's Armageddon is a little bit more visceral, I think. And kind of you mentioned kind of those suspense scenes in the core. I mean, I just think, it's not just that the whole plot is silly. The design of the ship is so silly that people die because of design choices of the ship that don't make any sense at all. I mean,
sorry, I just remembered some of the doors you cannot lock or you cannot manually eject one of the compartments, but there are actually buttons for that.
But the button is somewhere where it's really hot, and I mean, kind of. I think the whole ship was just designed as one giant plot point.
Yeah, but obviously.
And when kind of the ship is made out of what did they call it? Unobtainium.
Yeah, they call it unobtainium. It's the same stuff they mine in Pandora in Avatar.
Do they call it unobtainium there as well?
Yeah, they call it unobtainium there as well. Yeah.
Okay, there's a hidden connection between the core and Avatar. Let's explore that in another episode.
Let's do that. No, I mean, that chip design. And there are a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense because at the beginning, the main character gets kind of introduced as he does this experiment with sound waves going through rock or whatever it was. And then later in the movie, they're like, oh yeah, I've designed something that we can actually view the surroundings when we are underground. And it uses magnetic resonance. Why introduce him with sound waves if you're going to magnetic resonance? I mean, yeah. It's the same thing with the ship. They kind of get static on the screen, and he's like, oh, I've never taught the computer how to process empty space. But in the scenes before, you can actually see him. He's looking at a vase behind a wall, and there's a lot of empty space there, and there's no static.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the person kind of to argue that every movie needs to be scientifically accurate. I mean,
no.
I want to have entertainment first, but the disregard for my intelligence in both of these movies, I mean, yeah, they're stretching my, it's stretched really thin. I mean, kind of, yeah, I'm pretty close to saying, okay, just what the are you doing? Come on.
Yeah, and I think that's really one of the main problems. I mean, as you said, a movie doesn't need to be scientifically accurate. I'm even okay with the movie having some plot holes just so that everything else works out. That's okay. But if it doesn't follow its own rules, then, yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of, I mean, the basic rules of physics, I mean, that would be nice if a movie would do that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Would be nice, yeah. Okay, so even here, I mean, it's kind of looks like we give the edge to Armageddon here a little bit as well.
Yes, because it is about the spectacle.
Yeah.
In the end. It's a disaster movie and it needs to be spectacular, and Michael Bay just nails it.
Yeah. So this is the point where I have to admit something that I'm not particularly proud of. And it kind of connects a little bit to my overall thoughts of both of these movies. And yeah, both of them are very similar. They're equally good, equally bad, depending on how you want to put it. Armageddon, definitely the bigger spectacle. What is your reaction in the end to the Bruce Willis death scene? And sorry, spoiler alert.
Yeah. Actually, it works better than I thought.
Yeah. I'm so embarrassed, but when I rewatched it, I obviously knew that it was going to happen. And I tried not to, but I just got teary-eyed.
Yeah, it actually works despite everything. I wouldn't have needed it. I would have been okay if Bruce Willis would have lived. And it's a little bit of a bummer ending that way, because the Bruce Willis character is one of the few you're actually invested in Armageddon. I guess they wanted to have a bittersweet ending.
I think it's actually important that he dies. I don't think that the movie would work as well with him living.
Yeah.
And kind of I think it's necessary that, I mean, and again, it's just as stupid a plot point as the whole thing is in the core. And one of them has to stay back because someone needs to, I mean, of all the things they're capable of doing, they're not able to remote detonate the bomb. I mean, come on. This is so weird. But yeah, nevertheless, kind of, obviously you realize when Ben Affleck draws the short straw, you know that Bruce Willis, Harry is gonna stay behind. You obviously know that. But kind of the moment they kind of how they package the moment with, him kind of saving the guy his daughter loves, kind of the final acceptance of that relationship.
Yeah.
And kind of how his life, or kind of the life of him and his daughter and kind of her future flashes before his eyes. It's well done.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think it's probably some credit to the writers, Jonathan Hensley and J.J. Abrams. Yeah, J.J. Abrams wrote Armageddon, or co-wrote Armageddon. It's probably kind of, a little bit of their writing that this ending works the way it does. because, I mean, let's be honest, the Ben Affleck character, JJ, and Bruce Willis, Harry Stamper, they're definitely the characters who were the best developed in the whole movie.
Yeah, definitely. And you're completely right. It wouldn't have been the same ending, so it fits perfectly. Yeah, and it works. This is one of the character things that actually works in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that being said, what's our final verdict? The core versus Armageddon.
Well, actually, if you turn your brain off, at least so far that the scientific inaccuracies no longer matter, both of these movies are actually quite a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
And I would definitely recommend both of them. They're cool movies. They're not good in the sense that that they're really, really great movies. They're not Oscar material, but they're a lot of fun. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would say that they're both equally stupid, but Armageddon hides it a little bit better, kind of under all that spectacle.
Yeah.
And if you're in the mood for something really silly and stupid that you can just laugh all the way through and not in a way they intended it, watch the core. If you just want to have a stupid good time, watch Armageddon. But I think they're a perfect double feature.
Yeah. Get some friends, watch it together, because it's twice as much fun laughing together about these movies.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not turn it into a drinking game where you drink something.
Definitely not.
Every time something stupid happens, because you're gonna be drunk after 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, you wouldn't last the first act. So.
Yeah, but yeah, overall, it's just there. I mean, not every movie needs to be Shakespeare.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think both of them are quite enjoyable. Both of them are on my list of, I mean, I wouldn't say my guilty pleasure list, because yeah, it's not guilty and not a pleasure. That's just they're on my trash top list, so to speak. But yeah, the core and Armageddon, definitely worth a watch, I would say.
Exactly.
Any other last thoughts, or should we wrap this episode up?
No, I think we have talked enough about these two masterpieces. I think the audience will get the gist of it.
Yeah. Maybe just one little thing. The music of Armageddon by Trevor Rabin, actually quite good. Soundtrack, quite good.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is it for this week. Please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. We're on all major podcasting services and on www.passionofthegeeks.com. You can send questions and suggestions to passionofthegeeks@gmail.com, and you can find us on Twitter @PassionOTGeeks. So, Pat, take care. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon, Take care.
Go ahead. Make my day.